was reading up on kind of like the Howie Roseman. We were talking about contracts earlier today. Check it out. But we talked about the Kirby Joseph one. Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles, like someone did a study on how much they move in the draft, why he was so aggressive, why he's so aggressive and he moves so much. And I don't remember the exact quote. We know that we can move because we can get picks whenever we want to get picks. Like it was something like that. Like they don't care about moving off picks because they know they can come back and get those picks if they want those picks. And because of the reason they felt that way was essentially because of how they have the roster built. So they know they can hit free agency. Like if Philadelphia, I think has a ton of comp picks next year. They know they can go to free agency. If they just want picks, they'll just let guys walk. They just won't resign dudes. They'll get paid. They'll get comp picks back. And then they know they're going to get those picks back anyways to move in the draft. So he's had like a fearlessness, not only in how he's given his contracts and all this money that he's pushed to the back, but he's had a fearlessness in moving the draft because he attacks the draft from the thought of like, I got to be aggressive rather than afraid in terms of, I know that I can move the board whenever I need. If I need more picks, I'll move out. Leaving their draft picks so much that they're willing to give out the contracts they're willing to, which we're seeing for the Lions, these long-term deals, these big numbers. They're willing to give all these option bonuses and push things backwards because they're so confident in the dudes that they draft that they have no concerns that they traded up because they know they can acquire picks by letting other guys go, and that they're not scared to pay these guys because they're so confident in the guy that they drafted that they're just like, just give him time. If he doesn't hit in the first 2 years, give him time. He'll get there. And it made me think of the Lions, right? We'll see. Certain guys may not. Like Braddock Martin doesn't mean everybody hits. They weren't hitting on everybody, going back like 4 years ago. But, and they, they still don't hit on everybody. But like 4 years, they were missing a lot. But like that mindset definitely makes me think of Brad. You know what I mean? Like that mindset makes me think of Brad in the sense of like the 2/3 don't bother me. And you got another day 3 back and that kind of thing. It's going to be the end of the back of the end of round 3. I've also always said like I don't have an issue with it because we don't have like that many holes to fill. So get guys that you actually love. That way they can stick around. Like if you're just sitting back and drafting guys you kind of like, or maybe if you like them, and you're like, all right, that's a good pick. It's good value. Bam, it lines up, sat there 102, got our guy. And this is not to say my boards is because obviously maybe this guy 102 that I would have loved, right? Josiah Stewart wasn't even there. So like that wouldn't even work. You don't love, which means they're probably not going to make the team after a year or two because you're not going to have that same conviction down the road. Because ultimately the decisions that Brad makes when it comes to who are we re-signing, who are we going to let walk, who are we keeping, it all stems also back to, hey, you drafted this guy. What was your thought when you drafted him? And if you have that conviction of the guy that you invested in of the time, it's going to be way easier for you to have conviction to give him time. Be patient. We can pay him. That kind of thing, right? I think things get messy if, say, for example, Sione Vaki, who I'm confident he makes the team just because of his draft stuff mainly. But if you didn't have conviction that much when you draft, you're like, all right, we kind of liked him. And then maybe you just don't see a ton or you have like a bad game. Like we didn't get much of a sample size. You might be quicker to be like, just cut that guy. You all remember when we cut Jason Huntley before the dude even played? You don't want to be that team because now it's like, well, we can get picks for everyone. Okay, but you're not even like, you're not using your picks. I'd rather have him be like, hey, we missed, but we thought that dude was going to be awesome. So we gave him our picks to go get him. And we were patient with him because we believed in the guy. And because we believed in the guy and we believed whenever his number would be called upon that he'd have to play, that we felt that we could let the other guy go at his position, that we could get those comp picks back anyway, right?
And I'm going to continue, but two things here. First off, I believe the Lions have already done this just in reverse order, right? We saw it with Sam Laporta after trading away TJ Hawkinson. We saw it after trading DeAndre Swift, which was during the draft, after drafting Jahmyr Gibbs. They've done this in different orders as the example I'm going to use, even though I don't think this is going to happen. But just as an example, they've done this where they've had those guys that they've believed in, which has allowed flexibility to happen. And it's really just the whole idea of building through the draft. Second part, and this is something that Brad has shown us, is one of the bigger challenges is not replacing just positions because you're going to fall into more needs if you're replacing positions of guys you've already invested in, specifically through the draft, if you're trying to build through the draft. So if you use a 4th round pick on a defensive end and you don't have as much conviction with that player, then it could be very easy to within year 1, maybe even in year 2, say, hey, we got to replace that guy. And you go out and you draft another D end. Well, now you use 2 picks on the same spot. But the only reason you did that is because you didn't have the initial conviction to believe that that player that you drafted the first time around could fill that role. And there's no doubt that he may fill a different role. But if you have an idea that, hey, this is going to be our run stopper. He can bring us a little bit of juice. We'll kick him inside. That's his role. And then after a year, you move off him because you didn't see it in year one, or year two, you didn't see it in year one. Then all of a sudden, you're just drafting the same position. But if you had the conviction that you were finding that player the first time around anyway, then the second time you wouldn't have done that because you would have been patient to say, hey, this guy's going to make it happen. We just have to be patient with him. But that's because we believed in him, which means that we're not just stacking guys on top of each other, which is something that you definitely have to try to avoid. To me, this is clearly where free agency comes into play, because if you have conviction in your draft profile of a player, you believe a guy's developmental, for example, then you can use free agency to supplement that by drafting maybe a stopgap or signing a stopgap piece in his spot, understanding that you believe in the player, but you know it's going to take time. So now free agency makes sense. Rather than if you don't have that conviction and you're like, okay, well, he's just not showing it, and you don't look at him as a developmental piece, now you're hurrying to move off the guy because you're not getting that production fast enough, which then means free agency is not being now used as a stopgap for a developmental piece. You're using that to fill needs, which is, and fill the future, which is not how Lions want to do things.
Because now it's like, hey, let's just say, for example, let's go crazy. I don't think they're going to do this. I think you have to be patient with Isaac Tesla, right? I think you have to, because I don't think like Isaac Tesla is like, oh, you got him, now you can get rid of JMO. Like, I don't feel that at all. I was even thinking about from that perspective. Like, if I went to the wildest side of the earth and I was like, well, what if Isaac Tesla allows him to trade him, kind of like they did with Hawkinson? And I don't see that. I don't think he's going to be like there that fast. But let's say next year, right? Finishes strong. You get into next year, you feel really good. And you get there next season, you're midway through the year, Tesla's taken off. Now, I don't think they're going to do this. But all of a sudden, if someone was like, hey, bro, we'll give you 2 1/3 for JMO. And you're like, you know what? Maybe we'll take that deal. But you're able to do that because you loved Isaac Tesla. But if you were just lukewarm on Isaac Tesla, and he's only, and you know, even if you just had a strong finish last year, but you're only kind of like, you may not be willing to do that because you're like, we don't have a dude. But if you love that dude that you drafted, now you may be able to say, like, we're cool with doing that because we trust the dude that we got. Like, we think these guys can handle that. So I think, like, I prefer the guy with the conviction, even if it misses, because then at least, you know, you believed in the dude that you took more than anything. It's going to miss at times. That's just how it's going to go.
But in theory, it should also lead to more responsible decisions being aggressive because you know who you're drafting. There's a reason you're drafting. You have a role. You have an idea for the player, which means that when you have to make those tough decisions, your outlook on what you thought the guy was going to become can inform the decisions that you make. That way, it's not a blind decision of, okay, we haven't seen it yet, so we just have no idea. We're just going to guess here. No, we anticipate he's going to be this. We've seen the flashes of that, so that's what we can expect, which allows us to do this.
Like, you're going to miss on some of these draft picks. But I'd rather have it like that, right? That way you at least have the confidence in your own guy and you're going to be patient with him and you understand that we can get the picks back if we need to. Because I do think that's a huge part of it. And I definitely think he replaced Tim Patrick. Now, you know, could Patrick Urdu a comp pick? Probably not based on what he was paid this year. So he probably won't help you from a pick perspective if you have this guy. But if we just liked him, then we have to know what he is. So it's like you almost have to see the production there before you're willing to make any moves because you don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be in the spot where it's like, well, we can't move off this guy because he hasn't had the 800 yards which would replace what we're losing. He's only had 200 yards. He's only popped a couple times. He's only shown flashes, and he hasn't seen the field much. And then you're like, we're not going to make a move because we haven't seen this guy actually do it yet. But if you like loved him out of the draft, like that dude's going to be this guy, and you've seen the flashes, you're like, we really believe this is going to happen. Then you have the flexibility to move, and that allows you to go get picks back. It's like you can't make picks if you don't love the guys that you have. You can't get comp picks back. You can't let guys walk because you just have to keep. You have to keep everybody until they prove it. It's like, how are you going to prove it if guys are there?
And the final example to something we did in this draft, think about it. We let Kevin Zeitler walk, didn't sign a veteran in free agency, and felt confident, as Brad Holmes told us, he felt that Mahogany was a starting level player. And then he went up and got Tate Ratledge, someone that they like to get on the offensive line. So they had to also be really confident in their interior offensive line investments in this draft to let a guy like that walk.